Severe Florence strengthens into a Category 4 hurricane and is taking aim at the Carolinas. I'm Mike Naso from the IPR 365 YouTube page with the latest on the tropics. Now, we're only going to cover Florence, but I did want to touch on our other hurricanes. We have Hurricane Isaac, which is looking rather poorly organized. It's a Category 1. It is forecast to move through the islands into the Caribbean, but it should be weakening into a tropical storm as it moves through the Caribbean. That does not mean it can't come back somewhere down the line, but Isaac is not looking that great. Behind Isaac, we have the much more foreboding-looking Hurricane Helene, which is a Category 2 with 105-mile-an-hour winds. This should become a Category 3 hurricane. It would be the second major hurricane. However, it should remain out at sea. And we have a third feature now, Invest 95L, which is in the Northwest Caribbean. This should move towards the western Gulf of Mexico and could bring heavy rain to Texas in about 4 or 5 days. And if that became a tropical storm, it would be named Joyce. Of course, all eyes are on our Category 4 monster Florence south of Bermuda, forecast to make landfall as a major hurricane along the North or South Carolina coastline by Thursday. Here's the latest on Hurricane Florence as of 5 p.m. The eye of the hurricane was at 25.4 north, 61.1 west. Winds were up to 140 miles per hour, a very serious Category 4 hurricane. Moving west-northwest now at 13. It has that northwest component. It had been west-southwest and straight west. Now it's starting that northward bend, and the pressure has gotten as low as 939 millibars. We've had the NOAA hurricane hunters flying out there, and we have the Air Force hurricane hunters on their way. So we'll have airplanes flying into the hurricane all night long, giving us updates on its intensity. And it is forecast, by the way, to reach 155 miles per hour here north of the Bahamas. And the fluctuations back and forth will occur, but nevertheless, Florence is expected to be a very severe Category 3 or 4 hurricane when it makes landfall somewhere between Charleston and the Outer Banks. If I were on the border of North and South Carolina, Myrtle Beach, Wrightsville Beach, Surf City, Wilmington, I'd be listening to the local emergency officials. We'll have hurricane watches and warnings probably by tomorrow morning, and storm surge watches and warnings, because that's going to be a big impact at the coast. Very high storm surge, especially near and to the right of where the eye of Florence comes on in. Now, more bad news that I have to break to you. Look at what happens with this timeline. Here it is tomorrow. Here it is Wednesday. Here it is Thursday. Then Friday and Saturday. It doesn't leave North Carolina and Virginia. There's going to be blocking high pressure to the north, with this high pressure over here steering it towards the coast, and that is going to cause a major slowdown. So it goes from a Category 4 hurricane Thursday to a tropical depression Saturday. So it's going to be weakening. But that doesn't mean anything when it comes to the rainfall. And if Florence is sitting and stalling over North Carolina and Virginia, we could have prolific flooding, freshwater flooding. Very serious. There's a look at Florence on the visible satellite imagery, and you can see as the sun starts to set right there on the eastern eye wall. Look at the glare from the sun hitting the eye wall, kind of giving it what we call the stadium effect, like a 3D look right down into the center of the hurricane. And that's indicative of a very powerful storm, 140 miles an hour. That's how strong Hugo was when it devastated South Carolina 29 years ago. These are the computer models. You can see all of them are North and South Carolina, and they show that slowdown. The European model has been pretty good. It's a global model. You can see it also shows that high pressure to the north, building in again, kind of giving a block to the hurricane, causing that very heavy rainfall over areas of Virginia and North Carolina by Friday and Saturday. As far as the landfall intensity right now, a Category 4 is what you got to be ready for. You could hope maybe it would get down to a Category 3, but regardless, sometimes if it weakens, the wind field expands. You can see right now, hurricane force winds extend out 40 miles from the eye. Now, this morning it was 20 miles. So Florence is growing in size. Now, size doesn't matter when it comes to hurricane strength. The strongest hurricane that ever hit America back in 35 was one of the tiniest hurricanes you'd ever see. But it doesn't help. This is going to be a big hurricane carrying a lot of wind and a lot of storm surge, and we're going to watch the wind field expand as it moves closer to the east coast. Look at that track too, right off Africa. Oh, just a classic hurricane developing off Africa, almost turning away and then getting pushed back towards its fate with the Carolinas. These are the rainfall estimates, and this is going to go through the next, say, 5 to 7 days. We're talking 10 to 15 inches, isolated amounts over 20 inches. Virginia, North Carolina, these could even be on the low end if the hurricane stalls. And of course, that's to say nothing of the impacts on the right side of the eye with the storm surge right up into the Outer Banks and perhaps even the mid-Atlantic areas. We have those mass evacuations that are going to be taking place along the South Carolina coast tomorrow. Dare County and the Outer Banks, they've already started to arrange that today. So heed the evacuation orders. Look for hotels that might be available, bed and breakfast that might be available, and try and stay out of flood-prone areas. But try and do so, but don't do so hastily. There's another look from the Weather Prediction Center. Look at these rainfall amounts. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And that's to say nothing of our system down here in Texas in a couple of days. Whether or not that becomes Joyce, we'll still have to deal with some heavy rain. So it's going to be a wet, sloppy, moist time on the East Coast next week, to say nothing of the direct impacts at landfall from a monster hurricane. So here's the key messages for Hurricane Florence from the National Hurricane Center based in Miami, Florida. Number 1, life-threatening storm surge along areas of South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, and they will issue those storm surge watches by tomorrow, and all interests should have their plan in place. Number 2, as I mentioned, a very life-threatening freshwater flood threat. Remember Floyd in '99, the Tar River, all those farm animals floating everywhere, 56 people killed? Almost all of it was from inland flooding. You could hide from the wind, but you can't hide from the flooding, okay? And as the Hurricane Center says, this could extend inland over the Carolinas and mid-Atlantic for hundreds of miles as Florence moves in. Number 3, damaging hurricane-force winds are likely along portions of the South and North Carolina coastline, and that hurricane watch will probably be issued tomorrow morning. And by the way, once we have watches and warnings, we'll get updates and advisories every 3 hours instead of every 6. Damaging winds could also spread into areas of Virginia too. And finally, large swells affecting Bermuda and the East Coast, life-threatening surf and rip currents. The water already looks like a sloshy bathtub off the Outer Banks. Just don't go in it. It's going to get worse and worse as Florence heads your way. There's the water vapor imagery, and very foreboding. We have a very strong Category 4 hurricane, only forecast to get stronger. And again, it's kind of straightforward. We have the high pressure built in here. The hurricane's going to sail right into the Carolinas. Then we'll have another area high pressure come in, slow the hurricane down, and it's going to rain like mad. That's what the thinking is at this time. But again, a lot in play. We'll keep you updated. I'll be back next time with frequent updates on our dangerous Category 4 hurricane, Florence.